The president is moving full speed ahead with his executive amnesty. If you had advice for the Senate and House leadership, what would it be?
I would say break the funding for Homeland Security up into parcels. Don't present it as a whole bill. And that makes it much more difficult for him to stand in the way. And if he does stand in the way, particularly of things that are vital to the security of this country, then I think we can start talking about treason.
Dr. Ben Carson on this very program last week. He may sound mild-mannered, but he is very plain-spoken. And he could very well run for the presidency of the United States. As we are back here on America's Forum, we make note of the fact that certainly for the last 50 years, it seems the bonds between African Americans and the Democratic Party have been quite strong. Witness the election of Barack Obama as the first African American president of the United States. But now it appears, in the wake of the examples of people like Dr. Ben Carson, there are African Americans who want to return to the party of Lincoln, the Republican Party. Let's talk more about that now with one of our newsmakers, Newsmax contributor, talk show host, and out there Skyping in from Newsmax LA, our friend Larry Elder. So Larry, the parent website Newsmax.com has its list of 100 most influential African-American Republicans. You're on that list.
Right.
We'll get to that a little bit later. But apart from it, I know you're such a modest person. We don't need to get into making it about you. We'll make it first about the guy who may run for the #1 position in the country, Dr. Ben Carson. When you hear him, what's your take?
Very impressed. He burst to national fame when he said that criticism of Obama's health care plan during the National Prayer Breakfast that made him a national star right away. Mild-mannered, very successful, written a number of books about how he overcame a difficult background to become a respected surgeon. I think he's going to be a formidable candidate. He's got no experience, never held political office, not likely he's going to win, but I think he's going to make things interesting.
Well, talking about things being interesting, they've gotten quite interesting with, I guess we would call him the anti-Ben Carson, the man on the left, Al Sharpton. We talked about it earlier. Miranda had it in the news, this $20 billion lawsuit from the National Association of African American Owned Media. And this lawsuit claims that Reverend Al was paid just under $4 million from cable companies to say those companies met the standards of diversity, even though there's only one 100% owned African-American media cable company. Now, if this is the case, this kind of, do we just call this a racial shakedown? Is that really what goes on with guys like Reverend Al on the left?
It seems to me, JD, this lawsuit might very well be a shakedown as well. You're talking about an organization that's run by the former general counsel of Byron Allen's entertainment company. Byron Allen is joining the lawsuit. So it seems to me it's Byron Allen's lawsuit against Comcast, against Time Warner, and against Sharpton in order for Byron Allen's organization to get more time on whatever entity ultimately prevails. That seems to me to be what it is, a $20 billion lawsuit alleging that Al Sharpton has shaken down Comcast by a group that's arguing that Comcast should diversify. It doesn't make any sense to me. It seems to me it's just another organization trying to get something out of this by playing the race card.
Well, whatever the legal maneuverings, let's go back to the field of politics, because for once maybe politics is a bit more sane than all the court cases. You've been out in California a long, long time, Larry. We are hearing talk that a very prominent Republican, Condoleezza Rice, is being urged to run for the United States Senate. She shows up pretty well in that poll from Reuters and Field. Your thoughts on the likelihood of Dr. Condoleezza Rice perhaps running for the U.S. Senate from California?
Well, the only way, JD, a Republican can win statewide here in California is if he or she has some sort of cachet, as does Condoleezza Rice. We have no Republican holding a statewide office in the entire state of California. It's going to take a superstar like that. Meg Whitman ran for governor the last time, and at the time no one had ever heard of her. She spent $150 million and still lost. That's how much money it takes to get name recognition in California. So Condi Rice already has that. The problem, as I see it, JD, is there's nothing at all that suggests to me that she's a politician. She's been asked to run for many things. She's always said no. I think she's an academic. I just don't think she'd like the give and take, the sharp elbows of politics. I just don't think she's made that way.
Well, she always talks about becoming commissioner of the NFL one day.
Yeah.
And, of course, she serves on that committee for college football to determine the Final Four with that new playoff structure there. So maybe her heart really is with football, and when it comes to politics, she will punt. Now,
I think she's too sane for politics.
oh, well, that what does that say? That's right. I'm a recovering member of Congress. I know there was no suggestion of any type of problem here.
Well, JD, you are recovering, as you said.
That's right. Well, one thing about it, Larry, and you and I have visited before, but never really had the chance to talk. When you see your name on a list of 100 most influential African American Republicans, with the 2 minutes that remain, we get to one of your favorite subjects, you. But in all sincerity, Larry, where do you see yourself? Are you a Republican? Are you a libertarian? Are you a conservative? How do you describe elderism on the political spectrum?
I call myself a Republitarian. I'm a Republican, registered Republican, but I'm also a libertarian. I'm not a capital L libertarian, in part because I supported the war in Iraq, and I think a lot of libertarians are basically isolationists, and I'm not comfortable with that position. But what I argue as a black person, JD, is that we can make some inroads into that 95% Democratic black vote by arguing that inner city parents want vouchers. They want a choice to put their kid in the school that they want as opposed to a failing government school. You mentioned earlier in the segment about illegal immigration. One of my friends is Peter Carson now. He sits on the Civil Rights Commission, and he's written reports about the damage that illegal immigration does to job prospects for black people in the inner city. And the other thing is Social Security. Because blacks die sooner than whites do, JD, there's a transfer, according to the Cato Institute, of 10 grand from a black pocket to a white pocket over a lifetime. Having private savings accounts would enhance the net worth of black Americans probably more than anybody else. So Social Security, private savings accounts, doing something about illegal immigration, and getting a handle on vouchers. Do those kinds of things. I think you can make an inroad into that 95% monolithic black vote.
In the 30 seconds that remains, it sounds like you're laying out a case that a whole lot of African Americans really line up with Republicans, could identify as Republicans, but they just don't realize it yet. Is that fair? About 20 seconds.
That's right. In 1956, 39% of black people voted for the Republican Party. That's just 4 years before Jack Kennedy. It can be done.
And we will see what happens in the not-too-distant future, like, about 2016. Larry Elder, thanks. Stay right there. You stay with us as well. We're back following this news update.